Greetings from. Oh my God, I haven't done it in so long. I forgot what to say.
Oh my God, we fail as podcasters. Oh,
Well, I never said we were, but let's start over. I can edit this in post. Actually, I'll take
it
off the
looks so much
front.
better in post.
Oh yeah,
You're
it
too
always does.
lazy to have post. What are we talking about?
That's true. All right, greetings, friends of the apocalypse. This is the Apocalypse Nerd and I'm Scott Glancy, coming to you from our new, well, at least me, from my new studio, because as I posted before, there were some slight delays due to the move apocalypse. So I had to delay a little bit because I was still putting the office back together and everything. But I got all the technology working now, so we're able to get going again. I still got a little bit more work to do in here,
You
but
still have the monkey infestation.
the monkey is
The
always.
monkey is. Did you abandon it? Did you leave it in a dumpster that followed you?
No, the monkey never leaves. Okay, the monkey's always with us. And I'll let you know, there are monkeys all over this house. There's monkeys in the kitchen, monkeys in the bedroom. They're always watching.
I'm not really sure that's the way you should refer to your girlfriend as a monkey, sir. But all right, you.
Well,
Jeez.
well, we're all
Does she
praying.
watch this podcast? Are you in trouble now?
Oh, thank God she doesn't. But no, we're all primates around here. So, but yes, we're back. I said I got all my crap together. I said it took a little while just to get everything together. We appreciate your patience. So we're ready to go here. This week we're going to be talking about monster apocalypses. But before we get into that, because instead of just a good old boring, radiation, nuclear, viruses, zombies, let's talk about big honkin' monsters. But before we talk about big honkin' monsters, we'll see if we got. I don't really got a whole lot for much in the news today because I have been just, again, move apocalypse. That's been my focus, is getting my shit together. But I did run across a couple of at least interesting things. It's more video game related. There's a new video game out for, I know, at least the Xbox, probably maybe the other platforms, called State of Decay. It's a zombie game that has a little bit of RPG element to it, where like you start off like you're out camping and you're back, and you can actually find other survivors, build your bases a bit. So it has more of an RPG element to it. So we actually not just railroaded through a bunch of scenarios. So it's like you can invest and do missions, build your defenses, arm people. So I mean, I've only delved into it a little bit because I haven't had much time. But it looks interesting so far. It's a little bit different approach instead of the standard just run and gun stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. But it's refreshing to see a little bit of a change, something different.
Fair enough. You've covered Metro 23 First Light. You mentioned you started playing. Have you finished playing?
No, because I got it right before I had to start the whole packing process. So, like I said,
Apocalypse.
the move apocalypse happened, and it delayed all other apocalypses. So I haven't actually. I mean, I started it. I got into a little bit. It's very interesting so far because it's you get to see a lot more of the world. It's not just okay. Here's a couple things. It's like it started. If you've played it before, he was kind of working in the end towards these Rangers group, this like elite group. You're part of this group now. They got all this other crap going on. You get to see all these other areas. You get to see like this area called like Venice, where they actually have like it's flooded, so they got like boats and like in the canals and so you're definitely seeing a lot more stuff going on in the world. It's a lot more richer environment than the previous one. So it's nice. I like it so far. But and also speaking of big video games, I've only seen the trailer. It was announced that it's coming out next year. The trailer doesn't reveal a whole lot about the game, but because of the movie, which is going to be coming out, they've made a Mad Max video game.
Okay. Hadn't heard a thing about that. I was going to say that, we're The Last of Us, which we'll talk about, I guess, a little bit during the show. The Last of Us hasn't dropped yet, has it?
No, it has not dropped yet, and I won't be able to see it because it's PS3. So
yeah, that's my problem as well.
Yeah. So, but who knows? A lot of times when these games are exclusives on platforms, if they do well, they wind up eventually porting them into other platforms. So who knows? Maybe we'll see it. I'm not sure yet. But yeah, there is a trailer out there for the Mad Max video game. It just basically shows like car drives up, and it looks pretty badass. You're totally Max. this guy, you run across this guy laying in the road, and he's just like, please kill me, because he's like dying in the middle of the desert, just dried out, dying of thirst. He looks at his gun. He's got one shell in his shotgun, gets back in his car, and he's like, oh, don't leave me. And then next thing you know, the car's barreling down, and I'm going to run his freaking head over. And that's your trailer.
Can't spare you the bullet, but I can spare you the mileage.
Yeah, I can spare you. I can run you over. So that's all I've really encountered this week. I said it just between doing this and working and just craziness. I don't have a whole lot this week. Did you run across anything interesting of late?
I have not run across anything except the movie you just saw.
Yes.
Some friends invited me to out see it tonight. I was unable to do it, but you just saw.
The end is nigh. The end is nigh. The end is near. This is the end. Holy shit.
All right. And as humorous apocalypses go, how'd it go?
It was good. Most reviews say that there's a little bit of lull in the center, and that was true. It wasn't a very long movie. It's like $1.75. So it's not a super investment in time. It's funny. It's got some good stuff in it. There's just a little lull in the middle, but it's just funny. It's just humorous because all these actors, it's all the comedy actors that you know, Seth Rogen and Jonah Hill, all those people who've been in all these movies together are in this movie, and they're all playing themselves. So they're all hanging out. James Franco. And they're kind of...
I heard that was the hardest sell when they were trying to get the movie made, is they all wanted to play themselves and play these not very attractive versions of
like
themselves.
These public image kind of exaggerated versions of this stuff, like how people perceive them, like in the media. So, but it was good, though, because it was funny. They're playing these versions of themselves. And it was good. It was funny. It's worth a see. You know, if you can't see it in the theaters, you know, definitely rent it. It was a good night out. I enjoyed it. I laughed. So I thought it was pretty funny. Yeah, like, as far as apocalypses go, it's nothing outstanding. It's just more about, you know, the funny lines, the one-liners they're throwing out, how they dealing with the heinous situation that's going on, as they don't know what's going on, and I just love the funniest character I loved was what the hell's his name? Robinson, the black actor from a Hot Tub Time Machine. I can't remember his
I know who you're talking about, but I don't know him from anything except Hot Tub Time Machine. And so
it's
I'm not going to recall his name. I mean, if only we were hooked up to a system of data that could allow me to look up the name of this actor.
I know, it would be so weird if we could actually do that.
You know, maybe we'll be lucky. And
Craig Robinson.
Lucky you thought of that, because there's no way we would have been able to look up that data somewhere.
Oh, I'm not saying I looked it up or anything, but
no,
Craig Robinson. The funniest thing about him, again, not a big spoiler, but you see it in the trailers, he just has like a towel over his shoulder the entire time. It says Mr. Robinson on it. Like his monogram of Mr. Robinson. It's like this towel never leaves his side. It's so fucking, it's just funny. Just stupid. I just like stupid shit like that. But anyway, I digress. But yeah, Mr. Robinson, the towel. So everybody, if you have a chance to see it, I recommend. It's worth seeing. So, okay. All right. So back around. Now, well, we're going to talk about monster apocalypses. So I'm going to let Mr. Glancy talk a little bit more about this, because he's had a little more time to do his homework than I have. But we're going to talk about a little bit more of well, what defines a monster apocalypse? And again, apocalypses, like we've always said, aren't necessarily global spanning. They could be in small sections. You know, because a lot of times we talk about apocalypses, but it's apocalypse for an area.
Yeah.
But what
a good example is 28 Days Later. Which in the first movie eats England. It's not good for England, but it is not the whole world, and it's a great reveal in the film where the guy lays on his back and looks up and sees the contrails.
Yeah. Of
a jet overhead, and it's like, holy crap! It's not the end of the world. Yeah. It's just the end of England. You know,
just the end of the world for you. But so monster apocalypses, we're going to tell because we need to really define, like we were talking about earlier, is like, well, what is a monster apocalypse now? Because we wanted to be able to define. It's like, well, what about Independence Day? That's a monster apocalypse. Well, that's more of an alien invasion. So what's the fine line between like an alien apocalypse invasion as opposed to monsters? And what are monsters? Are they Are they sentient? Are they not sentient? Are they only animal intelligence? You know, we got to kind of, you know, maybe define that a little bit.
Well, certainly, I agree with you right there that, you know, what's the difference between, say, for instance, the tripods and the War of the Worlds and a monster apocalypse. And you've got these giant war machines stomping around humanity, you know, crushing us down to a level that is no longer threatening to the aliens. But it's really an alien invasion. It's really...
well, they're not really monsters. They're machines. It's their technology. So it's really an alien invasion.
Yeah. Same thing with Independence Day or you know, things like that. I think that yes, the aliens have a monstrous aspect, but
they're intelligent. They're intelligent. They have an agenda.
Yeah, and that's going to affect some of the things I throw out as examples. But like, for instance, you know, one of the things we were looking at originally was large monsters. You know, is it a monster apocalypse if it's big? Like, you know, does it need to be a Cloverfield-sized monster destroying...
Godzilla! Godzilla! Does it need to be a giant rubber monster?
Yeah, or is it a monster apocalypse if the isopods eat everyone from the inside out on the movie The Bay? You know, where it has a disease plague sort of aspect to it, but it's not a microbe, it's a macrobe, it's a fucking organism. It's something the size, you know, of a wallet eating its way out of you. You know, the critters in the Bay are quite large, or they start off microscopic as they get into you as eggs, hatch out, and just keep eating and growing until it kills you from the inside out. Is that a monster apocalypse? Is it, you know, is it more like a disease apocalypse? Like, oh, you know, like all the ones we talked about last time, like the stuff from Survivors, or the disease Captain Trips from, you know, Stephen King's.
Well, I think if to be a monster, it's definitely got to be, you know, there are intelligent monsters, but I think they need to not be human level or greater intelligence. Number one.
I agree that for a monster apocalypse, it's something big and nasty.
It could be animal intelligent, like dolphins are smart, but they're not human intelligent. You know, but they're smart.
It's kind of the invasive species problem.
Yeah.
That a monster apocalypse is what happens when you get an invasive species introduced into human civilization that just can't get along, you know, with all these highways in the way of its migration patterns. They may not be looking to eat us, but they're definitely going to stomp their way through our homes and.
Well, because they definitely don't want us around, because again, we're in the way.
Yeah, yeah, like, so for instance, something like Cloverfield or the movie Pacific Rim, I'm not quite sure they count as a monster apocalypse, because where do you go from monster apocalypse to just monster movie, like a kaiju, like Godzilla?
Godzilla. That's just a monster movie, because the monster always goes away at the end. They're always around. Has he destroyed a city? Absolutely. Is it an apocalypse for the city and they rebuild? But it hasn't had like you said, it hasn't had a global change on the environment eventually, or even in a small area, because they always rebuild, and it's like, okay, business as usual.
Yeah, it always resets to zero, sort of in a standard monster movie, in a giant monster movie, whether it's Godzilla or Cloverfield or whatever.
Well, Cloverfield, you know, could have had a larger span, because they had all those killer little frickin' parasites on it that were fucking scary. Those are the best part, especially when they're, you know, night vision cam in the subway and they're coming right. They're like, "Oh my God, what is that?" That was the best.
When the rats are running, where you're in the subway,
the rats first.
All the rats are going this way. That is a sign.
Yeah,
you should be going someplace else.
So I think it really, at this point, because since they supposedly killed it and there's been no follow up.
Yeah.
It's not really an apocalypse, you know, but it could have turned into it. And Pacific Rim, which is coming out, like you mentioned, I don't know enough about it. All I know is it's like giant monsters come to our dimension and want to destroy us all, and we come up with big fighting machines to fight them. So is it just a big fighting monster movie like Transformers, or does it eventually lead to apocalypse? I don't know, because we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, but I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be about. These monsters change our world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's not what's going to happen. Um, it's going to be about just us fighting the monsters. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
it's not going to.
So
Yeah.
and to add about monsters, now do the monsters just have to be mammals
No.
or lizards like cold-blooded? Could they be? They could be plants, right?
Yeah. Well, we will get to the Triffids, I promise, because
Oh
I
yeah, no, I
think
was
the
saying, well,
Triffids.
but the monster could be, it could be monster plants as well, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a, you know, big snarly teeth clawed, you know, thing stomping around tearing your head off.
Yeah. In fact, I would throw out, not only is there plants the problem in Day of the Triffids, there is a Japanese anime called Nausicaa and the Valley of the Winds, which is this. It's a movie and it's also a long running manga cartoon, I think, from long ago, like the 80s, I think, where the problem was again an invasive species. Humanity has been pushed to the brink of extinction by something called the toxic jungle, which is some sort of new life that's arrived on Earth. There's just this jungle that spits out spores that are, inimical to human life. And this new invasive species, this new environment, has terraformed Earth until humanity is pushed into these little tiny islands where they can only people they can be places you can survive are places where there's a lot of wind blowing the spores away. So coastlines and things like that. And it's certainly
That almost reminds me of there is a who frickin' wrote it? Brian Aldiss, way back in like the 30s, 40s, wrote The Long Afternoon of Earth, apocalyptic novel. What happened is it's hundreds of thousands of years or millions of years. It's basically Earth has become a big jungle, big overgrown plants, giant spiders. The Earth has stopped spinning, and it's hot,
mm-hmm.
and it's very sci-fi, and like humans are just these little insignificant specks there now. We're still around, but the overgrown jungle, giant things, because like I remember the spiders because they catch a ride on the spiders because they've made these web trails between the Earth and the Moon because it's all stopped moving. It's all just kind of just sitting there, and like they go out into space to the Moon. It just kind of reminded me of that real quick. Brian Aldiss, Long Afternoon of Earth, very very early apocalyptic novel.
Okay. So yeah, they've got no problems with plants being on the agenda. But I think the difference between a monster movie and a monster apocalypse is if you do a monster apocalypse, you have to show how the presence of monsters in daily life have changed society. It's got to show that the world's a different place now. Cloverfield and Pacific Rim just the world under siege. They don't show what happens when we have to readjust our entire way of living to the where there are monsters.
Yeah.
Um,
So I think that's pretty good parameters to work with. So let's maybe delve into some possible movies
okay.
or that are definitely apocalypse. Now, I think let's save Dave. We're gonna definitely talk about Day of the Triffids guy.
Yeah,
Day of the Triffids guys.
that is the classic first
Classic.
one. It's really the first one out of the bag, and it is, as far as I can tell, it's the first one out of the bag, and it is and that in a minute. There are others. We'll cover a few other goodies first. The first time I realized there was such a thing as monster apocalypse was that movie Monsters.
Monsters, yes.
Yeah. We've both seen that. Do you want to give the run up on Monsters, or should I?
No, Monsters. It's basically it's not really an invasion, but we stopped. If I remember correctly, these alien like pods or plants are dropping from the frickin' sky, and they all kind of go around the whole like northern part of Mexico, and they start spreading around and attacking, and they're kind of very big octopus-like walking creatures, and so they come in. There's large battles. And eventually, the lines are drawn where there's this whole, like forbidden zone,
Contaminated.
Contaminated zone.
Zona de contaminación.
That covers from like the south of the U.S. border into Mexico, and they've isolated it on our border. They have these giant walls, and it's changed, the environment because sometimes they come over the wall, sometimes they're around, but they generally stay within their areas. And the premise of the movie is, again, it's changed society because you have these things that are always there. They've destroyed huge swaths of land, and there's always a threat of them breaking out. So they got to kind of keep control of it so they don't engulf the whole world. And the premise of this.
Plus, the problem with the Mexicans are getting their country bombed on a regular basis by the Americans who are coming over to fix the monster problem, but they're flattening huge swaths of Mexico in the process.
Well, you gotta get rid of the monsters. So
there's going to be collateral damage, and they're not American voters. So what does Congressman douchebag care that we're dropping bombs, in the suburbs of Mexico City?
He doesn't. So basically, the premise of the movie is that, and it's a reporter is in Mexico, and she has to get back across the United States. She misses the boat. She kind of partnered up with this guy who was there as well, a photographer, and it's basically their adventures on how they're getting through the monsters to back up north. So. Yeah. You see a lot of once they get into the quarantine zone. You see a lot. You see some monsters. You see destruction. People are still living there, in certain areas, especially on the borderlands.
Yeah, they did a good job of showing that this creating a world, and then here's the really creepy thing: this film uses a lot of CGI, and they used it very smart because a lot of their CGI is things like road signs. They went and just filmed Mexican government checkpoints and things, and changed the signs instead of customs to atención, zona de contaminación, and put up all this information in Spanish about monsters and things like that beyond this point, and they did a great job of taking the environment of Mexico, which looks a little fucked up. In fact, I think they used. When they get into Texas, didn't they use some of the area of Texas that had been recently hit by a hurricane?
They might. I think they did because Mexico is basically it's the Hollywood backlot for the apocalypse. So it's already you got pre-built sets. Yeah. No offense to our brothers to the south, but
yeah. Well, it's the same thing for the Russians. Their country is already pre-apocalypsed. So Monsters was the first one I noticed, but then it made me realize that there was that, 8 years earlier, there's that bad Matthew McConaughey, Christian Bale film, Reign of Fire, where we've destroyed civilization with fire-breathing dragons, which, okay, not sure I'm quite buying that, but...
how they all came back, and I can't remember. Did they clone them, or they woke up because they've been hibernating for thousands of years?
They're digging a subway tunnel in London, and they hit Dragon. I mean, that's as far as I can tell. They're digging down, and somebody hit that that layer of dragon that the Earth has that goes all the way around.
Didn't you learn about that in geography or whatever?
Exactly, and so right between the magma and the crust is Dragon. So they struck Dragon. The Dragon shoot out of the hole, not unlike a geyser of petroleum, really, and proceed to set fire to fucking everything. And on the one hand, I like the idea that half the reason they fucked us up is because they burn everything, forests, crops. I mean, that every single fire is a problem, and because apparently they're eating the ash or something, so they're burning everything down so it'll be edible.
Eating ash is kind of.
I don't get it. Yeah,
I don't get it.
What's with their digestive tract? Look, it's a 10-hit die monster. It can only use its breath weapon twice a day. If the monster manual taught us anything about dragons.
Well, I did like how they tried to be a little pseudoscientific with it, like how it actually formed the fire. I mean, with the two different spouts and with the different chemicals that come out. So I mean, that kind of stuff was interesting. But the whole thing, it's like I don't remember, but there must have been like a million of them or something, because it's like, how did we not defeat them?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they can maneuver better than our aircraft. Okay, but I think our aircraft could probably fly faster. Okay, maybe helicopters. I don't know, heat-seeking missiles, fire dragons. What about all these wonderful anti-aircraft defenses we have? Couldn't we have taken those fuckers down with that? Any battleship out in the water has anti-fucking aircraft, anti-missile systems, and you can see a fucking dragon coming. Why couldn't they kill them? I don't get it.
Yeah, well, apparently they couldn't kill them because reasons.
What reason? What reasons? The delicious little chocolate candy that you.
No,
Oh,
I'm sorry, as in plot. We have to get the plot moving.
oh, plot
So,
device. Plot device.
it's
Okay.
too late for actual things. We're just going to have plot. Okay, moving along, we lost. And I some of that and that one I liked insofar as that it showed the sort of they showed the society after the apocalypse.
And how it adapted to all that and dealing with it on a daily
One of
basis.
my favorite bits being instead of where the two guys are putting on a play for the kids in the castle living in, and instead of doing Shakespeare, they're doing fucking Star Wars, where they're, one guy's got a welder's mask on, and he's like, "I am your father," and all the kids are like, "No, really? He's your father." And I was like, "Oh God, civilization is over. If Lucas is our classics, if that's all we've got, just bring on the dragons. Just let them finish this place off."
Yeah, so I mean, they had some interesting ideas, and like I said, it's like apparently, like I said, our defense systems couldn't do anything about it, but apparently, a couple of assholes with a helicopter and parachutes and a fucking pickaxe could, take care of the dragon
And
problem.
a harpoon. And a
harpoon. You can take care of the dragon problem. It's like,
Yeah.
what was this? Disney's Dragon Slayer, 1981. I don't.
I'll admit the dragons in Ring of Fire look almost as good as the one in Dragon Slayer. That was the first time I saw a dragon that didn't have 6 limbs. You know what I mean? They always have the wings and 4 legs. When the Dragon Slayer shows up, which John Dykstra, who did the Star Wars special effects, did that dragon, it's like, holy crap, it's only got its wings are its hands. And it had that whole
like a pterodactyl would be, a reptile.
Yeah, or like a bat with that creepy bat crawl on with the folded up wings. Anyways, enough about dragons, but at least that film, Reign of Fire, I still managed to enjoy it. There's a lot of people who've gone on to have much bigger and better careers since then.
Yes.
Including what's his name from 300, whose name has escaped, Jared Butler.
What, the buff guy?
Yeah, Butler.
Wait. Which one wasn't the buff guy?
I was about to say, you're going to have to narrow it down in 300. I think the only one who wasn't buff was perhaps the Hunchback, and it was still a pretty buff Hunchback.
He was buffer than you or I'll tell you that. But
oh, yeah, that's true. That's easy because I'm built like I have a physique like a week-old eggplant. Okay.
That's some bad imagery. But
yeah, it is. Well, it spreads out. You put it down on the table, it spreads out at the bottom. It's just not. That's when you shouldn't eat it. That's when
I think I'm going to be sick. But
let's stop talking about my ass.
You ran with it, sir. Okay, I didn't run with it.
Something less monstrous, shall we say? Something
Okay.
less monstrous than that.
Shall we talk about
The Mist.
The Mist? Thank you.
Yeah.
Love that film.
Yeah, absolutely. Love The Mist. There is your fucking monster apocalypse, where not only do the monsters change our environment by taking away our advantage of sight, but and turn the environment into something that's good for them and bad for us. But number 2, they're pretty fucking horrible. I mean, they're pretty ugly. The Mist. I mean, I read it as a short story. It was a radio play that I listened to on NPR way back in the 80s. And then 2007, the movie comes out. And
Wait. You listened to NPR in the 80s?
Yes.
Oh my God.
That's where you got to hear the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Radios, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy radio plays, back when they first came out in the BBC. So that's no excuse. Not a good excuse.
No, not a good excuse.
But
you gotta at least wait to your 20s you start listening to NPR. But The Mist, great, terrible monsters, the whole government fuck up, with what was it, the Arrowhead?
Arrowhead Project.
The Arrowhead Project. Say, oops, we opened up the gate and we can't close it, and now you get all these oogada-boogadas freaking crawling around in the mist and just fucking everything up. But just an overall view of the movie. Great movie, great tension.
Yeah.
Great that they did not have I love people. If you haven't seen the things we're talking about, you know what? Don't listen.
It's 6 years old. It's 6 years old.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen The Mist by now, for Christ's sakes.
Well, I'm not going to reveal the end, but it's like it had an unhappy ending, and people hated. I know so many people who hated that ending, and I think I applauded at that ending because I was like, thank you for making a not fucking Hollywood happy ending for
Oh yeah,
once.
to me it is the worst possible ending.
Oh, it's horrible.
The
It's
ending
horrible.
where the apocalypse is successful and humanity is on the trash heap of history and we're all going to die and there's no way out. That's bad.
Yeah.
But the ending that happens is actually worse to me because, it's actually a much more horrifying, terrible, depressing ending.
Well, he had to make a tough decision and a bad decision, and it's not a decision that there's any good time to execute it.
Never. And it just so happens he was wrong in the worst way he could possibly be wrong.
But we don't know. But we don't know because it ended and it seemed to be on a high note. But if I remember, I didn't read the story, but I remember at the end of the story that it doesn't really have anything. It just keeps on going. They're just going. So maybe just that isolated pocket's got their shit together. But who knows in the story in the world? Maybe it's okay. Yeah, we got our shit together here, but maybe other places it's not. Maybe they didn't recover. We don't know.
Yeah, because remember, they drive a long way before they gas.
Yeah, that's pretty far.
They drive a long way. All of New Brunswick and the state of Maine could still be under the mist. You know?
Oh yeah. Well, they had that giant thing walk around the size of a fucking mountain, and there's fucking dodo birds flying around the fucking top of it, whatever. Giant bird. I mean, the thing was so fucking big. How do you bring that down? It's as big as a fucking building, like a skyscraper.
I'm thinking some of those weapons that didn't work on the dragons clearly could be a good start.
Maybe, yeah.
Presuming you can find anything inside it like an organ. Yeah. I mean, for all we know, it's nothing but a giant sponge that every bit of it is, just as alive as every other bit of it. You're going to have to burn it to the ground before it stops flopping around. But at least it was a monster apocalypse in that the end of the world is caused by monsters. Yes, they're alien monsters, but that again, it's that invasive species thing.
Well, but they're not necessarily alien. I mean, they're more extra-dimensional, so we can kind of argue. But they don't have that. They're like Animal Intelligence, giant, crazy bug things and spider things with tentacles. They didn't seem to have an agenda.
No. They're just being themselves. They're just being natural. They're just filling this niche in the environment.
Yeah. So that's definitely, I think, qualifies as a monster apocalypse.
Yeah. Now, let's see here. One that I'd like to throw out is a film that I haven't seen yet. And the reason I haven't seen it is because, and it relates a little bit to In the Mouth of Madness. I would say that there's that In the Mouth of Madness is a film by John Carpenter from the very, very late 80s, early 90s.
In the Mouth of Madness? I've never heard of that.
It's In the Mouth of Madness is basically the
dude, I'm fucking with you.
Okay, thank you. Jesus.
How can I have not seen that movie? It's a classic.
maybe the ghost monkey performed a lobotomy on you while you were asleep. Did you wake up with a bruise right here on your eye?
My ear was kind of really aching, but
but the apocalypse that's going on in the Mouth of Madness is everyone's being transformed into horrible Lovecraftian monsters, right?
Yeah, it's definitely more of a supernatural kind of thing, but still, well, maybe it isn't. I don't know. It's like, is it supernatural? Is it not supernatural?
But you don't really. But again, since you don't see how society's like afterwards. There's no. It's really just. It's not really a monster apocalypse. It's all about the buildup. Now, the movie Dead Shadows is a French film, and if you go out and you look up the trailer online, it will knock your socks off. It's very much like that, except instead of the the writing of this writer changing the world because people read his writing and believe in it. That reshapes the world. The way that, when people believed in the Bible, that belief changed the world, so we lived in a biblical world. Well, now that this horror writer sells more books than the Bible, our world's turning into the horror world that he wrote because of the strength of human belief or whatever. I guess that's what's going on in Mouth of Madness. In Dead Shadows, it's just a creepy meteorite or comet goes by the Earth, and everyone starts to turn into horrible creatures. Giant, horrible, multi-legged, tentacly, vicious, too many teeth, way too many vaginas, too many teeth in the vaginas, too many vaginas in the teeth. Just horrible, horrible creatures, and killing each other in the streets, and our hero is trying to escape before he mutates, before he becomes one of them. And The previews look pretty good. And certainly it looks like the whole, if you look at the previews, it looks like the whole city of Paris is being destroyed by some giant Lovecraftian Cthulhu-sized amorphous monster at the end. So I'd say it's clearly a fucking monster apocalypse. Even if I haven't seen it, it's not just a little corner of the world. It's everybody. The problem is everywhere.
That's true. Sounds good. I'll have to look that up.
We tried to get it for the film festival, for the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival, but it just didn't happen last year.
Oh, okay. A couple of quick things. I'll throw a couple quick small ones out, and then we'll hit probably the meat of what we want to talk about. Is one of our favorites, Day of the Triffids. Is I mentioned earlier, it's a plant. It could have been a plant apocalypse if it would have come to fruition, but it might have. Was the wonderful, fantastic film by M. Night Shyamalan, The Happening.
That's another plant apocalypse. It
is a plant apocalypse. They're sending out these pheromones to make people want to kill themselves. So it was kind of, transforming the environment because, unless you had love in your soul, you wouldn't be affected by the pheromones. Yeah, I know. But it could have, wiped out humanity, and apparently everything was cool, and then at the end, oh my God, it's happening again. So it could have turned into an apocalypse to where there wasn't many people left because the Earth was getting pissed and trying to tell us, hey, you better watch yourself. So it potentially could have been apocalyptic, but not very good.
Because it doesn't show what happens afterwards, it's more of a disaster movie.
Exactly.
It's more like The Bay. I mean, I love The Bay, but it's a disaster movie, not an apocalypse.
Yeah. And then
the only things I'd mention is that technically, sure, zombies are a monster apocalypse, but it's such a huge category, it stands on its own.
Yeah, they have their own apocalypse, zombies. So.
But I would like to throw in Stakeland from 2010.
Yes, again, fantastic movie.
Low budget, super small budget.
It is a small budget independent film, and I think it's a fantastic film. I do own it, but I will say at one point it does suffer from indie film syndrome. At one point, I will say that there does get to a point where it's like, oh my God, come on! Enough with trying to create atmosphere and mood.
Keep moving forward. Don't slow the story down. And they do. It has some serious lag.
Yeah.
But it's got strong ideas and very good.
Very strong. Because it's vampires, but it does what I like. It actually turns vampires back into monsters. They're actually not, they're not, walking around and sparkling in the daylight, or even Bram Stoker type of, oh, I'm a gentleman. They're monsters, and that's it. They're there to feed and eat you. That's it.
Yeah, no seduction, no Eurofag accents,
yeah.
no dressing like a headwaiter. They're just slithering, just dirty monsters, things.
Yeah,
and
there's no organizations, there's no there's no covens, there's no
tribes or Camarilla stuff.
Yeah, none of that bullshit. They're just monsters, which I think is fantastic. Again, good film. I could say, yeah, that could be, we could say, is it a vampire apocalypse? But again, how do we classify vampires? But if we just classify these as monsters, yes, I'd say that definitely is a monster apocalypse.
Yeah. And I think that's it's really one of the best ones. And the only other things I want to throw out are, that movie, the video game coming out, The Last of Us, has got its fungus zombies, but I don't know if they fill the role of zombies so completely. Maybe they're not really monsters, or like what I'm trying to define. But on the books department, there's David Gerald did a series of books called The War Against the Couture. And it is an alien invasion where the aliens aren't even bothering to show up and zap us with their death rays. They've just infested the earth with invasive species. Their plants are crowding out our plants. Their animal life is devouring everything that we've got, our crops, our livestock, our people. And the Couture are these giant, sort of city bus-sized armored caterpillar things that are tromping around, the world, building nests, breeding, and pushing humanity further and further back. And that was a pretty darn good monster apocalypse because David Gerrold spends an enormous, maybe too much time defining how the war is changing the world, how society is changing under how at first, the world ignores the problem. They try and pretend it's not happening. When the Americans say, "Hey, this is a problem, we need to get on top of it," the whole world is like, "Oh no, this is just an excuse for the American imperialists to rearm and start their war machine. And we're going to make sure that no matter what, you guys don't rearm." So the result is places like Brazil and Mexico get eaten, while they're standing around worried about what America's going to do if it tries to become a global superpower again, or if it has the ability to become a global superpower again. And he talks about how the society changes and stuff, but some of it gets off the rails. Gerald's got a number of eccentricities, shall we say, that in some ways get in the way of the story. But I guess the War Against the Couture, and it's got to be a book series from the 80s and 90s, was sort of a classic monster apocalypse. But that's all the ones I can think of before we get to the really important one.
Yes. Again, anything else is kind of insignificant. It's possibly like oh yes, our good friend Day of the Triffids book movie.
There we go.
Yeah. So Day of the Triffids, Monster Apocalypse, Monster Plan Apocalypse.
Yes.
It was originally a book, which then eventually became a black and white movie. And
no, the movie is color. The book's 51.
Oh, that's right.
By John Wyndham. The movie is 1962. It is color. There's a 1981 TV series of which I've got my copy. Ta-da! Of the 1981 TV series with that classic British television, not the best special effects that ever happened. And then there is I
have my copy as well. It's in the other room, but I do have it. And
still in a box, still packed up from Move Apocalypse. But then there was a recent 2009 TV series that
I heard about it. Didn't see it or hear anything about it.
Well, I'm an old fuddy-duddy, so I'm all thrilled with the Triffids in the 1981 version were puppets, essentially. There was an actual critter, on the set with the actors. Same thing in the 62 movie. It was a practical effect.
Practical effects, not CGI
it's
fest.
all CGI in the 2009 one, even for the close-up sort of intimate scenes. Now, the 81 thing, did plenty of video effects to make there be. They probably had 6 to 10 Triffid models for the show, and then they would do video effects to layer those in to make more larger and larger herds of Triffids.
Well, that's fine, but they were still real effects, real props. So anyway, we'll probably they said that as mine. That is my favorite as well. The 1981 was a British miniseries. Was it the standard 6 episodes that they do?
Yeah. Let me just see here. 157 minutes, which is that's 3 hours, right?
Break it open. Does it say how many episodes, or has it got any episode list or anything? I don't. Again, mine's not handy.
Let's our little booklet that comes with it and see what it tells me. 6 episodes.
Yeah, he gets it. Well, I only get that, folks, because that's standard British TV, 6 episodes. For a miniseries. So start to finish. If those who aren't familiar with Day of the Triffids,
give them the backstory.
Yeah, basically, if I remember correctly, it is a Triffid is a plant, and we make this. We scientifically generated and made this plant to solve their petroleum problem because we were able to get a more efficient fuel out of these plants. But the thing is, these plants were somewhat a little bit sentient. At least in an animal intelligence way, or at least. We didn't know this right away, but people are like, these things are acting weird,
but they're carnivorous, they're mobile, they can get around very, very slowly on their roots, and they kill shit and then just dip their roots in the rotting bodies and draw nutrients out of rotting corpses.
Yep. So they're carnivore, they're carnivores. They'll kill you and they'll eat you. So Normally,
they've got the thing that the stamen in the flower shoots out like a tentacle with a poison stinger.
Paralyzes you, and then they just start digesting you like a flywood or something.
Yeah.
Now, normally these plants would not be a problem because we have them in farms and we have electric fences and they get around. None of this is a problem because we got it all under control. Except, wait, it was a comet, right, that went by?
Yeah, a meteor shower.
It was a meteor shower that happened, and it mysteriously, because of the lights or whatever beams that came out of it, anybody who looked at it was blinded. That created a problem because most of the world's population was blinded.
So went outside, stood up, looked up, and said, "Hey, this is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime event."
I can't see. So
the blind apocalypse that's stapled on top of this is pretty fucked up. Just the part where the whole population, 95, 99%, they're not dead.
They're blind. They're not. Yeah. That all comes from that because people can't see. If they can't see, they walk into things, fall off of things. They can't find food, and they starve to death.
Remember the scene where the guy's trying to get the paint can open or something, and because he doesn't know it's not food?
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, God. And so our hero comes over and tries to take the paint can away from him. The guy's like, no, it's food, it's food. He's like, no, sir, it's just paint. He's like, you're lying, it's food. You can't take my food. I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, so you get some people who are not blinded by this, and so you have their trials and tribulations of trying to get out of like a major city, and they get out of the major city, and they have their problems. Like one of the characters, some of the blind people find them and hold one of them hostage. You gotta be our eyes and lead around. So you start seeing these things where there's packs of 10 people being led around by one person who could see. Handcuffed together. Well, that's later. That's a different thing because eventually they come across some remnants of the government, and they're like, "Oh, you can see, great. We could use you. You're in charge of these 10 people, and you gotta put them in houses and take care of them and show them where to buy food, and you're gonna gather resources." They try to get this whole organization, which really isn't a bad idea because what else are you gonna freaking do, right?
I was actually going to say that it was just the opposite. It starts off where they find something that's like the government, and they're like, sure, come on in. We're going to get out of London, move to the Isle of Wight, reorganize and things, but we're leaving all the blind people behind. We're just cutting them loose.
Oh, that was a different group. Well, I guess there was two groups then?
But that one activist, there's that one guy who's like the activist who's like, you bastards in there, you're the power, and you won't help these people. And he's the one who tries to organize the bands. And our hero, our main hero, gets caught and dragged around with these bands of blind people. And when he finally gets free, he still won't abandon them because he feels so guilty about leaving them. So he's still helping them, but they don't make it. They just don't make it until the only people left alive are our main character who worked on the Triffid farm and the activist who kidnapped him and forced him to help. That's the only two people who are left alive at the end.
Oh, well, then there's the thing with the government is like, yeah, we're going to go to this island, and it's like, oh, you're a woman, it's great, because now you have to make sure that we got to. It's a whole about breeding again. You got to make sure you can't be committed to anybody because you're going to have to breed with all these at least 3 men, and you got to have babies, and we got to keep the population going.
Oh yeah, when they start getting all organized, it's like, oh really? So what I want's out the window? Yeah.
Yeah, you're
the emergency. It's all what you want no longer counts for shit.
So yeah, you're going to be spitting out children for the rest of your life. Enjoy it. That's
maybe your granddaughters can have jobs, but right now
your job is
you've been demoted.
So you get all this craziness until eventually they get out into the wilderness.
Yeah.
Per se, out of the cities, and they encounter groups of people, and they try to organize. Again, the effects aren't the great, but it's the constant threat of the plants are there all the time, because they're quiet. You don't fucking hear them. People
that was another thing is how creepy quiet they are until they find a prey, and then they got that thing where their roots will beat against the big sort of pitcher plant trumpet. That they have that flower that's like a pitcher plant's trumpet, and they beat against it. It makes this horrible knock, 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 knock sound that the other plants can sense the vibrations and will all kind of like a zombie moan.
Yeah.
And then they all start flocking in.
That's right. They sense vibration. They're like, don't move. They can't see, but they can feel your vibration. So they have to like. There's a couple of encounters where they
Yeah,
gotta stop, stay still, don't make it. You know.
yeah. But Triffids and the 1981 series that you have and I have is the closest thing to the original book.
Yeah.
It's the closest thing to the original book, and it's a great. The book is really good. The one thing that they did in the '62 movie that I always thought was interesting, because it never came up again, was in the '62 movie, one of the big things about where there are survivors and organized government survivors is that huge numbers of Navy personnel survived. Anyone who was in a submarine on station, you didn't surface
Yeah.
to see the pretty lights during the Cold War. It's 1962. So the submarine crews all get through it. The same thing with, the guys manning silos. All those guys survived just fine. And in the '62 film, there's a thing where, the Navy has showed up in England and are trying to, do reconstruction and whatever. There's a scene with these submarines where I think they're literally transporting sighted survivors to the Isle of Wight or off the coast of England to, and that doesn't come up in any of the other versions. But I always thought that was kind of interesting that, one group that would survive, anybody who's in a submarine on station.
Yeah.
And all those guys are going to have no problem.
Yeah, so it's definitely a good one. I don't know if it's available on any like Netflix or Hulu or one of the. I'm trying to remember if it's available.
I think that the most recent Triffid may be available. I'm going to go ahead and look it up right now.
Yeah, I don't know if the 81. The 81's probably the best, and it has them dealing with the plants and how they eventually they build their fortress and how to defend against it and how they kind of try to rebuild their society. It's like how they like in Survivors, like, well, how do I rebuild my way of life? How do we continue on as quote unquote normal? So
yeah, and because it's a British apocalypse, you get that information. It's not just about how are we going to fight the guys with the mohawk this week?
Yeah.
And if I remember, Triffids, the '81 Triffids, they advanced the clock like 10 years into the future, where there's a little girl they save, and by the end, she's a woman.
Yeah, they definitely they do advance a little bit. Wasn't also there's a guy with a helicopter too or something like.
That was the activist who kidnapped him at the beginning and was all like, we're going to save the blind people. And by the time they're done doing that, all the blind people are dead. And he's like, well, I guess I'll go find those guys who went to the Isle of Wight and apologize for being a dick.
Yeah.
And so he eventually goes to the Isle of Wight and comes back with the news that it's working, that they have, island-wide Triffid gathering contest to burn off all the seeds and kill all the fledgling plants. But
well, like he learned to fly a helicopter, and like I remember, like somebody came like, "Hey, there's a helicopter." It's like, "Yeah, I had all this time to learn how to fly it," or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. All it cost me was 2 helicopters, and now I can fly.
Yeah.
What I always liked though was at some point when they finally got their little coastal, their coastal compound with the generator and everything, and they're camped out by the sea, were the guys who turned up in the armored car to announce that we're from the provisional government. And
yeah, always. I know.
And what was cool was the guy who's the spokesman for they're all in uniforms and everything and all look real snappy, except the one guy's got these earrings in his ear, and it suddenly remained, it was a throwaway scene 3-4 episodes before, maybe 5 episodes before, where that guy who's now major something or other of the provisional government, he's one of the punks scavenging in London.
Oh yeah,
he's just this punk who's gunning down blind people who get too close to his patch. And now the apocalypse has made him. He's a man of property, and
he's a made man.
Yeah. All he had to do was not look at the meteor shower, and woohoo! In the kingdom of the blind, and I really liked that this character who you saw just as a throwaway thug, and you think, well, you're never going to see him again. No, you see him again. He turns up, and suddenly he's the authorities. So the original '81 Triffids miniseries, awesome. The remake, not so good. It suffers from the same problems as the remake of the Survivors, of Survivors, because it's less about dealing with the situation and more about people getting on each other's nerves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, not to sound like grognards, but sometimes the older stuff is better because they just did it better. They didn't, they just tried to tell a good story.
Yeah. Well, everyone likes to see people arguing. Why do you think, reality TV?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, sadly, non-reality TV is taking a lesson from those programs, and what people want to see is conflict between the characters.
Well,
But yeah, the best monster apocalypse is clearly the Triffids.
yeah.
And it keeps getting remade. I mean, it keeps getting done again, which amazes me. The story is now 62 years old, ladies and gentlemen.
One book, one movie, 2 TV series.
And 3 radio versions. When I looked it up on Wikipedia, the BBC has done it as a radio play many times. And that just, and God knows.
It's very deserving.
There may be some comics out there. I am not aware of them.
It could be.
Triffids keeps coming back for more. And certainly the whole blind apocalypse thing is freaking horrible. We are 2 fucking delicate organs away from being somebody else's breakfast.
Yep.
Yeah, and that really is unnerving in the Triffids. That's the only thing that keeps us ahead. That's gone, we're fucked.
We're totally screwed. So.
Yeah.
So, folks, if you can, check it out. Definitely worthwhile. Probably our best recommendation for a monster apocalypse.
Yeah.
Check it out. Again, the 1980, was it 81?
81.
81 British TV series. I think it is available on disc in our region. I think they came out did they come out with an our region version? Is yours?
Yeah, mine is NTSC, Region 1. So
okay,
that's
yeah, that's us. They did come out with I think the first version I had was the Region 2 version, but then they came out with a American version, so I got the American version just because it works better with the system. So, again, folks, you can check that out. All right, well, so we've talked a lot of monster apocalypses, some good recommendations there.
If anyone's seen Dead Shadows, if there's anyone out there who's seen Dead Shadows, the French film, please comment on the YouTube page. I'd love to hear somebody's take on it. I have not been able to track it down yet, but I'm hoping to do that very soon.
Cool, very good. Just to let you guys know, next show, 2 weeks, we're gonna talk about comics and graphic novels in the apocalypse. I have an extensive collection of graphic novels and some comics myself for the apocalypse. There's a fair amount of stuff out there. Not just talking about zombie comics. There's a bazillion of them ever since the whole zombie thing took off. But I got a lot of old school ones, and we're going to be having a guest on next week, William T. Thrasher, who was on us previously when we were talking about games. Because I was talking to him about comics, and he's like, "Oh, what about this and that?" So he had a couple of post-apocalyptic comics that I'd never heard of. So we're going to be having him join the conversation on the next show, which will be in 2 Mondays from now. So.
Excellent.
All right. So again, I don't. Not very. I don't have a lot to say this time because again, I've been dealing with my move apocalypse. But as I always say,
that and the monkey lobotomized you when you were sleeping. I've warned you about that monkey.
I can't do anything about it. But
not now that it's planted the chip in your head.
What? What was that? What? But again, folks, be social media responsible. I said if you like the podcast, like it on YouTube, like our Facebook page, share it with your friends, let other people know about it, because the more people we have listening, the more followers we have, the more the word gets spread. So, follow us on Twitter, go to the blog, follow the Facebook page. Again, tell your friends, because Facebook page has been pretty static. I haven't got over about 50-something people in a while, so if you haven't liked it yet and you are watching, like it. Tell your friends to like it. Share it on on your page. Share it around the internet. Again, watch on the YouTube, like the YouTube ones. And again, now that I've, once I get settled in, I'm going to be able to go back to working on the audio. I promise. Yes, I know it's another Jared promise that, oh, he'll get around to it eventually, and I will get the audio thing squared away so I could get on iTunes, so you'll be able to just subscribe to the podcast and listen to the audio. I am working on that. I promise once I get this house in order.
All right. A likely story. But nonetheless, we noticed that you're clearly not in the same room you started in, so there has been some forward progress for moving Prime Base.
Yes, it is now in a new location, more north, a little bit more away from the contaminated zone, so it's a little safer theoretically. We'll see what happens.
All right, I guess we're signing off then. I have no last words necessarily, except, if you haven't seen Triffids, you're only hurting yourself.
Exactly. So there you go. All right, so folks, again, 2 weeks, we're going to talk about comic books, graphic novels, and the apocalypse. Thank you again for joining us as always, and I am the Apocalypse Nerd, and
I'm Scott Glancy from Pagan Publishing.
And thank you very much, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Good night, folks.
Good night.